Sit rep
Transaction approved.
No, they're here already.
Tommy.
Since last night's declaration of
Today,
martial law, soldiers are moving in to secure key areas in all
In response to UN presence in Minneapolis.
Last night I dreamt about how things were.
Of every enemy of the state!
And then I woke up here.
Basically, it's a strong language that he's using, and he's very emphatic that he's going to continue facing the situation in Marawi.
King County bought the Econo Lodge last week with the intent to isolate people with COVID-19 and quarantine others who may have it and have no home to go back to. This week, 2 people were placed there, one released after they tested negative, and the other arrived last night to wait for a test result. This morning, he left, crossing the street to the 7-Eleven, goes inside. Video shows him allegedly shoplifting, and then he's confronted by the store clerk who's behind the counter and leaves anyway with stuff in his pockets, gets on a Metro bus and leaves.
The person woke up and left this morning before we had a substantial opportunity to have a conversation.
But it's the fact that he left the facility where he, as well as others in the future, are supposed to stay put. He didn't.
I'm extremely frustrated.
The mayor of Kent saying the walkaway is exactly what she feared when the county bought the motel without any consultation with the city, saying all stays are voluntary. In response, the county says it will start placing more responsible patients in the motel, but walkaways can happen.
Statewide schools shut down. KOMO's Keith Eldridge was with the governor today, joins us live from Tacoma. Keith?
Yeah, we're at Lincoln High School. It's all locked up right now. They learned yesterday they are part of that 3-county shutdown that was going to last at least 6 weeks. Now we've learned the governor has ordered this statewide shutdown.
Something that my health department has said clearly, we have a clear and present danger of rather epic proportions in the state of Washington.
The goal is that this doesn't disrupt as much as possible, especially with the senior class.
Teacher Megan Holyoke trying to ease the fears of students who are now facing 6 weeks of uncertainty.
I can only imagine that, as the adult in the situation, I'm feeling, nervous and a bit of uncertainty of what's to come. I can't imagine how my high school students are processing this kind of information.
The school invited us in to see what the students and staff are dealing with. And I want to let you know we're staying 6 feet away from you because we want to make sure we keep our social distancing. What are you going to do for 6 weeks to keep busy and keep learning and keep safe.
Coming from going to school every day, 6 classes a day, to being more independent, doing packets of work at a time, doing all of our classes and learning online is going to be a really big social change.
It's going to be pretty boring. I don't know what I'm going to do at home. But maybe I'm a mom in the garden.
And some are a bit more introspective.
It gives us a little, maybe a time to, not relax. You're not going to keep gaining. But, yeah, I think that it gives us a little time to breathe, basically, and really think about our next move.
Whatever they do, the governor says it's important that they're not here in close quarters.
But look, we got to understand, this is a devilish virus.
People wonder why we call this a plandemic and not a pandemic. U.S. virus plan anticipates 18-month pandemic and widespread shortages. The 100-page federal plan laid out a grim prognosis and outlined a response that would activate agencies across the government. A federal government plan to combat the coronavirus. We've got to launch a war against drugs. We have to launch a war against terrorism. We need to launch a war against the coronavirus. And what does every one of those war launchings do? It increases federal power. Something the people of the United States and no person in the world needs on their back. You need the government monkey off your back. And you don't need that monkey on your back saying, "We're here to protect you. We're from the government. We're here to help." Warned policymakers last week that a pandemic will last 18 months or longer. They're setting out the plan for us in advance like they always do. Kind of like that predictive programming that you always see on your TV screens. And could include multiple waves, resulting in widespread shortages that would strain consumers and the nation's healthcare system. Let's talk about that for a second. Remember one of the tenets of Saul Alinsky's rules for radicals? Take control over, commandeer the healthcare system, because when you have the healthcare system, you have the people right where you want them. The 100-page plan, and that's what Bernie Sanders wanted too. Bernie Sanders wants universal health care for all. Well, that's what's happening. And it's happening under the Trump administration. And socialism is happening under the Trump administration. And we have a socialist country that does socialist things as people say they reject socialism. Let's just wake up, smell the smelling salts of reality, and just come to our senses and just speak the truth. Get away from all these euphemisms and these lies that comfort people. The 100-page plan, dated Friday, the same day President Trump declared a national emergency, laid out a grim prognosis for the spread of the virus and outlined a response that would activate agencies. Don't you love that? Activate agencies across the government. Does that make you feel safe? That agencies, government agencies, federal agencies are going to be activated in your region and potentially employ special presidential powers to mobilize the private sector. Among the additional key federal decisions listed among the options for Mr. Trump was invoking the Defense Production Act of 1950, a Korean War-era law that authorizes a president to take extraordinary action to force. Remember what Washington said? Government is not eloquence. It's not reason. It is force. And like fire, it's a dangerous servant and a fearful master. You don't want government in your life. Government is the initiation of unjust force and violence on peaceful people who just want to be left alone. And they will always use necessity to get in there, to get in on your good side, to get in on the public's good side. Necessity is the plea, said William Pitt the Younger, for every infringement of human freedoms. It's the argument of tyrants. It's the creed of slaves. It's necessary. We've got to get in there and we've got to help you. We've got to do this. We're from the government. We're here to help. We mean you no harm. Yes, they do. Taking away your individual rights, it equals meaning you harm. Take extraordinary action to force American industry to ramp up production of critical equipment and it's critical equipment and supplies such as ventilators, respirators, and protective gear for healthcare workers. And here's what the plan says. Shortages of products may occur, impacting healthcare, emergency services, and other elements of critical infrastructure. The plan warned. This includes potentially critical shortages of diagnostics, medical supplies, including PPE and pharmaceuticals, and staffing in some locations. Now, I'm not going to read the rest of this article, but people in your area and my area, I'm going to read some of these comments. Check this out. Are genuinely scared because of the propaganda being pushed by fake stream, 24-hour a day, 7-day a week, CIA infiltrated Operation Mockingbird media and government sources. They're being scared to death, and scared people do things that are irrational. People who make irrational decisions box us all in, and we all lose in the end. Every one of us. We lose our money and we lose our freedoms, and that's exactly what's happening. But check this out. This is a comment under this New York Slimes article. Let's deal with Trump later. We'll dump him in November. The past is the past. After browsing through the plan and reading some sections in detail, it's clear that our unfairly maligned public servants have been at work. Unfairly maligned public servants? You mean the ones who've gotten us into endless wars? The ones who continue to propagate the drug war? The ones who continue to fund the military-industrial complex? The ones who continue to fund the prison-industrial complex through the war on drugs, which isn't a war on drugs at all, it's a war on people? The one that's gotten us $24 trillion into transgenerational debt slavery, not including unfunded liabilities. If you throw in Social Security and Medicare, it's $130 to $150 trillion in debt. Those unfairly maligned public servants, you've got to be kidding me. Now is the time for action from the White House down to each individual citizen. We are in phase 2B, community mitigation, and need to successfully suppress and slow the spread of COVID-19 to avert catastrophe. You want to avert catastrophe? Get the federal government off your back. Period.
Good evening, and it's great to have you with us here on a Thursday night. And it was another day of fast-moving developments in this coronavirus emergency, and we will carefully get through it all right here with you tonight. We're going to begin with the states of emergency across this country, and now here in New York City, a state of emergency declared as well. Tonight, more than 1,300 people sickened in the U.S. At least 39 have died in this country. At least 45 states now and the District of Columbia reporting cases. Additional school districts shutting down today. Now 4.9 million school children across the country at home. That first containment zone now in effect. The National Guard on the scene in New Rochelle, New York, just outside the city. And in New York, a ban on crowds of 500 or more, Broadway dark, concert halls and museums set to close. And that state of emergency here in New York City, the mayor reporting a major jump in cases today, 95 confirmed cases, saying there could be 1,000 in just a week.
2 tents set up here at the fairgrounds where that drive-through testing kicks off 8 o'clock Tuesday morning. But first, you'll have to use your smartphone to log on to an app to make an appointment to see a doctor. The University of Mississippi Medical Center is stepping up testing for COVID-19. Starting next week, anyone who believes they have coronavirus can come to the state fairgrounds in downtown Jackson for a drive-through test.
This is not wide open testing. Anybody just decides they want to do a drive-through as if you drive through a restaurant.
Here's how the system will work. The hospital will conduct a telehealth triage of potential patients after they log on to the C Spire Health app.
On the app, after a brief registration process, I'll call them a patient. The patient will enter into a virtual waiting room and will be picked up by a UMMC clinician.
A clinician examining the app will screen for symptoms of the virus such as fever, cough, or shortness of breath. If they meet the criteria, a test will be scheduled for the next day at the fairgrounds. Doctors expect to see 128 patients in the drive-through testing, working 7 days a week.
If they do not qualify for testing at that time, they will be provided some COVID-specific information, and they will be encouraged to call back if their symptoms change.
It's very important for us to target these resources to the people who need it most, and that's going to be testing people who are symptomatic to make sure we can diagnose COVID.
And the state health department says once you get tested, it should take 24 hours to 48 hours for the results to come back and to get that diagnosis.
The NCAA tournament canceled, the NBA season suspended, and that chaos across much of Europe tonight. Americans are rushing to get home after President Trump announced overnight that 30-day travel ban from Europe to the U.S. It caused a lot of confusion, and we'll explain tonight. Passengers right there in Barcelona lining up for a flight back home. While on Capitol Hill today, Dr. Anthony Fauci from the National Institutes of Health acknowledging after they were asked about testing in this country, he said the system is not really geared for what we need right now, saying, quote, it is a failing. And word tonight from Tom Hanks and Rita Wilson, who have tested positive. They described their symptoms and when they knew they needed to be tested.
Tonight, preparing for life in the pandemic. In New York, National Guard troops tasked with delivering an estimated 400,000 pounds of food. The first shipments sent directly to that hot zone outside of Manhattan. We were there as the food arrived.
Here in New Rochelle, the National Guard has been activated. They're bringing in bags and bags of food. These are mostly non-perishables, but they also have lunches prepared for children, breakfast as well. There's a lot of uncertainty right now in this area, but one thing is certain. They want to make sure families don't go hungry.
So many here told to stay home, living in the nation's first containment zone. This warning outside of a reported testing facility. Keep all windows closed. More than 100 cases here in New Rochelle. And in New York City, with 42 new cases today, the mayor declaring a state of emergency.
I think we have to fully understand this is the shape of things to come.
This as New York bans all gatherings of 500 people. Starting tonight, the lights will go out on Broadway. The Great White Way told to shut down, along with performances at Carnegie Hall and Lincoln Center.
So we're going to take very dramatic actions in that regard to reduce the number of people in contagious environment.
New York following the lead of states like California, Oregon, and Washington, all cracking down on crowds because of the coronavirus. More than 10,000 school closures nationwide, affecting nearly 5 million school children. Scores of colleges and universities also canceling classes. From San Jose to Salt Lake to Boston, so-called surge tents popping up, ER rooms preparing for potential patient overflow, as doctors across the country are sounding the alarm on the need for more testing.
Right now, we're really limited, and the demand for testing far outweighs what the state's capacity is.
Today, federal officials were pressed on who was in charge of making sure people who needed to be tested, including healthcare workers, are.
There's not one person that can ensure that these tests can be administered. Yes or no?
My colleague is looking at me to answer that. Here we go.
Okay.
The country's top infectious disease doctor making this admission.
The system is not really geared to what we need right now, what you are asking for. That is a failing.
And failing, yes.
It is a failing. I mean, let's admit it.
As doctors scramble, so are Americans stuck overseas.
To keep new cases from entering our shores, we will be suspending all travel from Europe to the United States for the next 30 days.
The president's surprise travel ban on most flights from Europe, leading to chaos at some airports.
It's just honestly pandemonium. No one knows what's happening. I don't know if this ban currently applies to U.S. citizens, but I'm not going to risk it because I do not want to be stuck in Barcelona for 30 days.
The White House later clarifying the ban will only apply to foreign nationals, not citizens or green card holders. But travel could get worse. The president not ruling out imposing domestic travel bans.
Are you considering any travel restrictions within the United States, such as to Washington State or California?
We haven't discussed that yet. Is it a possibility? Yes, if somebody gets a little bit out of control, if an area gets too hot.
And overnight, a scare in the air for passengers aboard a JetBlue flight from New York's JFK to West Palm Beach. Officials say a passenger alerted the crew upon landing. He received a notification he tested positive for the coronavirus.
An individual on this flight got a text that he tested positive for the coronavirus.
The plane and both airports sterilized. Passengers released, told to monitor their health over the next few days.
So let's get to Tom Llamas, who's leading us off tonight from New York. And Tom, I know here in New York City with those new rules, they limit crowd sizes. Right now, still no plans to shut down mass transit. But the bigger picture tonight, and you tried to clarify there in your report, because there was so much confusion after the president spoke last night, Americans will still be allowed to travel home from around the world and Europe, even during this 30-day ban?
That's right, David. To be absolutely clear, foreign nationals from certain parts of Europe right now are affected by that new travel ban. As you mentioned, here in New York, there is a state of emergency in the city. Cases have spiked, but the mayor making it clear that mass transit will not be shut down, though transit officials, David, say ridership is down.
I want to thank all Americans for pulling together, for coming together, for doing what they have to do. It's been incredible. It's been inspirational. All over the world they're watching, but all over the world they also have problems. It's in over 120 countries. It's called the invisible enemy. That's what it is. It's an invisible enemy. But we're doing tremendous work. The truckers, the doctors, the nurses, everybody. They're just doing tremendously. And of course, you've heard it 1,000 times. Wash your hands, good hygiene, all of that. But social distancing, keep away. It's going to have no place to go. And I just want to thank you as president. I want to thank you for the incredible job you're all doing. There's spirit in our country like never before. We've pulled together as a unit. We've pulled together as a country. Hey. We will prevail together. We love the USA.
State health officials have tested 6 potential cases of coronavirus in the islands. All came back negative.
Now, with COVID-19 testing capabilities, the state will expand the criteria for testing. Before, it was only those with symptoms who traveled to or from China.
That's now been expanded dramatically, and we do expect a lot more testing to occur as a result. The disease is now known to be widespread in other countries, Iran, Iraq, Japan, South Korea, and Italy are all areas where the disease is circulating.
This state lab in Pearl City is the only facility testing for coronavirus in the state. The facility could test more than 200 samples per week, but under CDC orders, private labs will soon be able to do the testing as well.
We'll ask that they send from other laboratories in Hawaii who are beginning to do this procedure, send their first positives to us, and we'll help them with their quality control.
Currently, all of the testing is being done manually, although there is a pending request to order automated testing equipment that would allow for more and faster results.
We are preparing for the worst and hoping for the best. As you have seen in China, they've tested 80,000 individuals for the COVID-19 virus. So we clearly are looking at being able to accommodate as many tests as are required in our community.
Here's my question, guys. What's the lie? What's the game here? You're smart people. Why are they whipping us into a panic? Why are they lying about massive lines of people at testing centers? Why are they turning away the trickle of folks that show up to be tested?
Urgent Care Hawaii says its drive-up service was deluged by requests for coronavirus tests, especially yesterday.
What is the game? Because for the life of me, I cannot figure it out. Night after night being told there are these long lines of people being managed at the urgent care, that they're being overwhelmed.
Some waiting as long as 4 hours.
Actually, the president or CEO of urgent care, while I was in front of the place, was telling me, we're doing the best we can, managing these massive lines. I'm like, I'm here, lady. And there's no lines.
We were overwhelmed yesterday with the response to people wanting testing.
So my FaceTime Lives have gotten the attention of urgent care because now they have sent the police here. Yesterday they sent them as well, and they were on my side. They were on my side. They thought it was ridiculous.
He escalated, and apparently, he threatened our employees.
By the way, I like these guys. They're good guys. Those poor girls in there making $15 an hour, I'm sure they're good women. And I don't blame this poor woman. Her CEO should be in prison for taking our money and lying about lines. Okay. There are no lines.
And we had to, ask for help. So we did call security, and the police came and helped to let him know that he needed to leave.
Now I'm gonna ask the officers how big the line is so we can get them to verify there is no line. How you doing, officer? I just want to know why urgent care doesn't want me to document they're lying on the news about being overwhelmed with lines and testing all these people. They're taking state money and they're not testing anyone. I've been watching this. Everyone that comes to be tested, they send away. Am I breaking any laws?
Right now, no.
They're breaking some laws.
What they're seeing.
They're taking our money. Look at that line, officer. You see that line?
We don't call disturbance. I believe they wanted to trespass you.
For sitting in there, documenting that they're not testing anyone?
For whatever reason, if they wish to trespass you, they can trespass.
Okay.
And then they have the right to private property.
Yeah, I know. Are you the CEO? Did I talk to you yesterday? So are these the overwhelming lines that you guys have been lying to the people of Hawaii about? Are these the overwhelming lines? Do you see a line there? What's your name?
Oh, okay, you want to be here. Okay, first of all,
By the way, I have a lot more followers than you.
I don't have any followers.
Well, good.
We're going to get up with this.
I'm a journalist, and this is going to be a column, and it's going to be read nationally.
That's great.
About how you're lying, that there are massive lines.
I never said there were massive.
That you're doing. You tested 25 people here yesterday?
You know what, sir?
You said that.
This not the time we are arguing.
You didn't test 25 people.
Okay, you're videotaping people trying
No, I
to get
didn't.
into a medical
No, I didn't. I got nobody going in.
Ma'am.
Officer, why can't I press charges for assault? Are you the CEO of Urgent Care? Wow, you must be upset that you just assaulted me. She's the CEO of Urgent Care and she assaulted me. And it's on video. Thank you for proving my point that I caught you lying to the people of Hawaii. She grabbed my hand, she tried to steal my phone. They're going on the news. They just had a press conference talking about overwhelming lines in Kapolei. Thank you.
Take it off the train. It's not the time and place for it.
Now I know we hit a nerve.
Doing.
I really don't know how I cannot press charges for that. I mean, I got it videotaped. You know, I haven't recorded a single person going in there. I wouldn't do that. What I have recorded is a table with nobody there for hours and nobody coming up.
And what's your point?
My point is, why are you on the news saying you're overwhelmed with people coming to be tested?
We've dealt with that.
When?
We have dealt with that. And there are regional testing centers open all over the state. There are regional testing.
You said in Kapolei, you did 25 tests yesterday. It's in Hawaii News Now. That's a lie. And the time this was all taking place, nobody, not one person. So I want to know why they are on the news saying that the Kapolei location is being overwhelmed with people coming for tests. What is the game? This is not how I want to spend my Saturday. What is the game? Is the game? Is the game?
We need to meet a new constraint, and that constraint has to do with CO2. CO2 is warming the planet. I asked the top scientists in this several times, do we really have to get down to near zero? Can't we just, cut it in half or a quarter? And the answer is that until we get near to zero, the temperature will continue to rise. And so that's a big challenge. It's very different than saying, we're a 12-foot high truck trying to get under a 10-foot bridge and we can just sort of squeeze under. This is something that has to get to zero. Now, we put out a lot of carbon dioxide every year, over 26 billion tons. For each American, it's about 20 tons. For people in poor countries, it's less than 1 ton. It's an average about 5 tons for everyone on the planet. And somehow we have to make changes that will bring that down to zero. We'll bring that down to zero. We'll bring that down to zero. 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 It's been constantly going up. It's only various economic changes that have even flattened it at all. So we have to go from rapidly rising to falling and falling all the way to zero. This equation has 4 factors, a little bit of multiplication. So you've got a thing on the left, CO2, that you want to get to zero. And that's going to be based on the number of people, the services each person's using on average, the energy on average for each service, and the CO2 being put out per unit of energy. So let's look at each one of these and see how we can get this down to zero. Probably one of these numbers is going to have to get pretty near to zero. That's back from high school algebra, but let's take a look. First, we've got population. The world today has 6.8 billion people. That's headed up to about 9 billion. Now, if we do a really great job on new vaccines, healthcare, reproductive health services, we could lower that by perhaps 10 or 15%. Now, if we do a really great job on new vaccines, healthcare, reproductive health services, we could lower that by perhaps 10 or 15%. But there we see an increase of about 1.3. The second factor is the services we use. This encompasses everything: the food we eat, clothing, TV, heating. These are very good things. Getting rid of poverty means providing these services to almost everyone on the planet. And it's a great thing for this number to go up. In the rich world, perhaps the top 1 billion, we probably could cut back and use less. But every year, this number on average is going to go up. There's a lot that has to come together. So this is a wish. It's a very concrete wish that we invent this technology. If you gave me only one wish for the next 50 years, I can pick who's president, I can pick a vaccine, which is something I love, I can pick a vaccine, which is something I love, I can pick a vaccine, which is something I love, or I could pick that this thing that's half the cost with no CO2 gets invented. This is the wish I would pick. This is the one with the greatest impact. If we don't get this wish, the division between the people who think short-term and long-term will be terrible, between the US and China, between poor countries and rich, and most of all, the lives of those 2 billion will be far worse.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you.
Hi, I'm Kevin Tuttle, a former Air Force officer, father of 2, as well as president of the Adverse Events Recovery and Information Center, which helps fund recovery to the people injured by your decisions. I sat down the other day to watch Netflix, and as happens to every middle-aged man, I decided to watch a World War II documentary. It occurred to me while watching this that you people are going to be in a heap of trouble when the Nuremberg tribunal-like trials happen here, after your crimes against humanity are uncovered. Because what history shows us is that truth prevails. My grandmother survived a Nazi regime that eventually crumbled due to what the world finally saw was happening, mass murder. Your tyrannical regime is also crumbling. The people are rising up against this slow Holocaust you're inflicting upon us. You can't hide the truth from parents who have witnessed vaccine harm. I read this week that your buddies at the WHO recently revised how adverse events after vaccination are classified, so that if a child with a heart condition, for example, gets vaccinated and then dies, it was his heart condition that caused his death and not the vaccine. Isn't that convenient? Tell me how that's ethical. It's shocking how a product that isn't safety tested, isn't tested for carcinogenicity or mutagenicity, and has no liability can be so revered amongst medical professionals. What you call science is simply marketing, and people are seeing through it. For instance, people know that acute flaccid paralysis is polio, triggered by the oral polio vaccine. Changing the name doesn't change the condition. Your lies are being uncovered. The lies that come from this board and the CDC cause far more sickness and death than measles, chickenpox, whooping cough, and all the other diseases there are vaccines for combined. Let's take a look at some of your lies. Your slogan of safe and effective. The definition of safe is protected from or not exposed to danger or risk. Effective means successful in producing a desired or intended result. Clearly, your products aren't safe since the Supreme Court ruled they were unavoidably unsafe, and countless testimonies prove their danger. I can only presume your intended outcome is to injure and kill, so I'll let you have the effective portion of that. You should be sued for misleading advertising. When you tell patients that they need Gardasil or they will get HPV, that is a lie. When you say the flu shot is the best way to protect yourself from the flu, that is a lie. When you tell the new mother that her baby is in danger unless it receives the Hep B moments after birth, that is a lie. Vaccines don't cause autism. That is a lie. Remember the Tuskegee experiment. Their lives could have been saved. But those in authority watched them suffer and did nothing to help, much like the Nazi leadership. How is what you're doing here any different? Your lies are catching up with you. I'd start worrying about that trial.
Look, this is a historic move. I mean, Gates, obviously the legacy, speaks for itself and really rarefied air. And this is really the baton fully being handed to Nadella. I mean, Gates will still be there as an advisor, but no doubt this is, I think a seminal day for Microsoft, and just shows, with Gates leaving, the confidence in Nadella.
Dan, I hate to be a pessimist, but when we hear a founder come out and say that they want to step down, they'll continue as an advisor, but they want to dedicate more time to philanthropy, can we believe that?
I can pick a vaccine, which is something I love. I can pick a vaccine, which is something I love. I can pick a vaccine.
Multiple overseas media outlets have reported on the fact that polio vaccines linked to the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation and his Gavi Alliance have on record caused nearly 48,000 children in India to suffer neurological damage and become permanently paralyzed. Most recently, over 50 African children from Chad also began convulsing after receiving a Gates Foundation-funded meningitis vaccine that specifically targets African people. Those children, some as young as 7, have also subsequently become paralyzed.